Welcome back. Excuse me for driving in my big-ass truck, but I just felt the need to talk, so I'm talking. I wanted to talk to you guys about the Telepathy tapes. It's a fucking awesome podcast. I highly recommend it. The podcast itself is about nonverbal, non-speaking, autistic people who feel like they're very much disconnected from their body. Like, some of these autistic people will have to experience pain or do something like wear a heavy necklace just to feel their own body, just to feel like their neck, or just to recognize where they're at in space-time. They literally have to be reminded that they're in their own body. That's how disconnected they are from their flesh. They don't have a lot of control over their body or things like speech. Because of this disconnect, because of this separation from the physical body, they've developed what Kai, the person who created the documentary, calls spiritual gifts. And I know it's crazy, but the most mundane version of these spiritual gifts is telepathic communication. The ability for two entities, human, animal, or otherwise, to communicate over a long distance without the means of technology, just through the ether that surrounds us, the universal subconscious that connects us all together in this world wide web that we weave of emotions and thought. Everything is mind. Everything is mental. The whole paradigm that we have of a materialistic scientific point of view of, hard atoms being the basis of all reality is not correct. Atoms and the subatomic particles inside of atoms are not these little particles. They're waves of probability. And these humans, these autistic people, are able to tap into that mental field, like Rupert Sheldrake says, and they're able to communicate with each other over large distances. I'm going to talk a little bit about this and also about what I believe are signs that in the past humans had greater access to these spiritual gifts. We've lost them as we've civilized ourselves. We've given up these spiritual gifts. You know that all humans in utero, before we learn how to speak, all humans are born with a photographic memory, but because of neurological trimming, we forget how to have a photographic memory, and it is instead replaced with language. Language takes up a huge amount of our brain's internal memory. It's the way we communicate with each other. One of the cool parts about telepathic communication is you're communicating with thought forms. You're communicating with ideas. Instead of the word Thanksgiving, you have an image of all your family together, the breaking of bread, your uncle watching football, a big fat turkey, your cousins arguing about politics. All of this stuff comes through with the thought of Thanksgiving, as opposed to just a word, which carries a different thought for each person that's experiencing that word. Each person has a different concept of Thanksgiving that they have to tap into whenever they hear the verbal expression of the word Thanksgiving. For instance, see, humans used to be able to communicate like this a long time ago, back when we could remember our past lives, back when the Sumerian King's tablet, said that kings were living for thousands of years. Kings were not living for thousands of years. They were dying in the flesh and being reincarnated and remembering their past lifetime, and then the baby was taken to the fucking throne and sat back down on the throne to continue ruling. Thus, you never had a different point of view. You're always stuck in the same point of view. You can never experience duality. You can only experience that singular point of view because you remembered your past lifetime. All your past lifetimes were just a continuation of the same mental lifetime. As opposed to now, whenever we die, Alice strips us of those memories so that we're born fresh in a new body, and we can thus experience life as that being. And karmically, we inherit lives that teach us lessons and try to correct mistakes that have been made in the past by giving us the opportunity to advance and to grow spiritually, to add mass to the brown giant that is our consciousness until enough mass is achieved that a sort of spiritual fusion initiates, just like with a star. If Jupiter was a little bit heavier, if Jupiter had more mass, then it would ignite. It would create an eternal fusion and turn into a star. But Jupiter can't do that. It's not massive enough. Just like most humans can't ascend to a state of enlightenment right now because they don't have enough mass, enough spiritual mass, enough experience, enough knowledge, enough gnosis in order to grow to a place where they can ignite, become enlightened, become basically a deity type being, like the Buddha or like Jesus or any of these other number of avatars that have showed up. Like basically every 500 years, one shows up to try to teach us the way. Well, there's a lot of kids these days, autistic children, who are talking about these deep spiritual thoughts. They're talking about reincarnation and the idea that time doesn't exist, that you're living all of your past lifetimes and future lifetimes concurrently right now, and the only thing that exists is the now. They know this intuitively. A lot of these severely autistic children will wake up tired in the morning because they said that they're getting taught at night in a classroom-like setting, mentally, getting taught by God or by other being. Like, for instance, one of the kids says that her spiritual guardian is a being that was like Cleopatra. And if you know anything about me, you know that Alice always presents herself as a Cleopatra type character with a Cleopatra black haircut, with the bangs and the short hair. But they are taught things in the middle of the night about deeper spirituality. And the reason they're taught these things is, one, just to be able to cope with a reality in which most people treat you like you're completely mentally defective, even though you're a whole person on the inside of your head. Your body can't respond to social cues like most humans can. So, you know, the education you're receiving at night is to help you cope with this life. But also, I believe these people are being groomed to be humanities teachers. I once believed that the reason there were so many autistic people on planet Earth currently, especially in America, is because of the poison they feed us, the poison they put in our water, our air, our food supply, vaccines, medications, etc. Like Robert F. Kennedy. I thought that, you know, these medicines might have been causing us to, you know, go from like 1 in 10,000 people being autistic to 1 in 36 people being autistic. But now I think that this is not the case. They are showing up right now in society to be our spiritual teachers, to help lead us into the age of Aquarius. They are going to have a large impact on human civilization. Some of these people even say that they can go to like during their classroom studies, there's a wall with a series of hats, like a almost infinite number of hats on the wall, and each hat has a corresponding name attached to it, the name of an author, and you can pick up the hat in the dream state, in the mental state, pick up the hat and put it on your head, and you instantly know the combined works of this entire author. There were children who knew Mark Twain and The Great Gatsby, and they never even opened a book before because they had the information downloaded from the Akashic records into their conscious mind. One of the boys said that he knew a lot about Harry Potter, and his mom was like, wait, you've never read Harry Potter? You've never even watched one of the movies before? And he said, yeah, my sister read it in the other bedroom, and I was listening to her read it in her mind while she was reading it. So he knows all about Harry Potter. He's never read a book, never read a sentence, just instantly got this information. But one of the coolest parts, I think, is this thing called the Hill. The Hill is a telepathic communication hub, basically an etheric Akashic chat room where these nonverbal autistic people, and perhaps people who aren't autistic but they can tap in to this realm, this chat room, they all talk. During the podcast, the interviewer asked one of the guys how many people were in the telepathic chat room, how many people were on the Hill, and he said 3,740 or something like that, a very specific number. So that means that they're consciously aware of the amount of people inhabiting this spiritual mental realm at any given time. This is a hard concept to grasp because they are all sharing thoughts with each other. They're all sharing data with each other simultaneously all at once. And people have friends on the Hill. Like they'll go hang out with someone from a different country. Some of these kids can speak languages that they've never heard before, that they've never learned. Excuse me. Sorry. These children can speak Russian. They've never been to Russia. They can speak Arabic. One of the girls can even read hieroglyphics. You know how many people in the world can read hieroglyphics? Not very many. I would be interested to see, just like Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan interviewed the creator of the telepathy tapes, and he was like, I want to put cuneiform in front of one of these kids and see if they can read that. Because, you know, we all know that Zachariah Sitchin probably made up a bunch of shit. So we need an accurate accounting of what exactly all of these cuneiform tablets from the Library of Ashurbanipal and, you know, the Eridu tablets. We need someone to actually decode this. Eventually, artificial intelligence will do it, but these kids could do it, which is pretty crazy. I imagine that these kids with these special powers, basically they can astral project, they can read people's minds, they can travel back in time, they can communicate as a collective. The reason it's called the Hill is because they exist in that place as a big mound of consciousnesses all piled up. And because of this pile of consciousnesses, it creates a sort of mental high ground where they can perceive the rest of consciousness, the Akashic records, the mental grid around them from a higher vantage point. But yeah, the Hill is incredible. It started off as just, you know, one kid talking about the Hill, and it was kind of crazy. Then they go across the country, and some other kid brings up the Hill. You know, typing on an iPad, not even able to verbally communicate, but they're talking about the Hill, this chat room that they all go to communicate. And then they go across the ocean, across the Atlantic to Great Britain, to France, to Spain, and guess what? These kids are talking about the Hill as well. They're all talking about this Hill. My thought is, if these spiritual gifts are real, if this is possible, the government knows about this. This is probably why they demonize spelling, their ability to communicate using iPads and spelling boards. They demonize this because they want these people to shut the fuck up. They probably have deep underground military bases with 100 of these motherfuckers hooked up to quantum computers and, you know, giant supercomputer data banks and processors and tubes running into them, and they're probably using them for all sorts of shit, which is evil. I mean, they're weaponizing autism, which I thought was only a meme, you know, weaponized autism, like, you know, during the great meme war of 2012. But yeah, it's pretty interesting, man. These kids can communicate telepathically, and I believe we've been doing this for a long time. I'm probably making all of you guys dizzy. Sorry. I am going to stop this video here, and I'll add in the editing room more context later on. But I want to show you some evidence, semi-proof, that humans in the past had these abilities, that we've forgotten how to live like this, how to communicate like this. The golden hats of Europe, the gigantic golden pointy wizard hats, they know they're several thousand years old, and they know that gold is a very good conductor. And I mean, hell, it's using microchips. I think that they use this to facilitate communication from long distances. Specifically, the Phoenicians did, in order to communicate with ships out at sea going across the Atlantic to America. Because we all know the Phoenicians did travel to America well before Christopher Columbus, well before the Vikings. The Irish probably got here first, like 7,000 years ago, based on the Wendover bog bodies that we found in Florida that were buried in the same exact way as the Celtic bog bodies that we find in Ireland, buried in exactly the same manner. In fact, their DNA, guess what, is Irish. They try to cover this all up because they're trying to pretend like they're Native Americans, but they're not. They're white people who 7,000 years ago buried their bodies in Florida. I'm completely fucking rambling. Sorry. But I think that people have been coming to America for a long time. In order to communicate with somebody back then, you didn't have a cell phone. If you wanted to know the status of someone traveling across the ocean, which, you know, took almost a month, then you would need to communicate telepathically, which that's instantaneous. I think they use these gigantic conical hats as an antenna. And I think they use pillars. There's a temple of pillars, which basically looks like an antenna grid. And it's made out of quartzite, which is, you know, is a piezoelectric antenna that was capped with gold. I think this was a telepathic antenna array that was made in ancient Phoenicia, ancient Canaan. That technology was lost whenever Rome destroyed Carthage. I think there's still a small number of people that understand this information, survivors of the Punic War, but we used to be able to do this. We used to be able to talk to each other using our minds. And there is a group of people on Earth, if I had to guess, probably about 144,000 of them, that communicate like this. They communicate telepathically. Hell, some of these kids can even heal. Like, people who had terminal cancer, they lay their hands on them, cure them of their sicknesses, like Jesus. These are spiritual gifts. These are spiritual powers. Whenever you reach a certain level of Buddhahood, these powers unlock. And it's probably different powers for different people based on your specialization and your personality. But different people can do different things, obviously. But reality is stranger than fucking fiction. Reality is much stranger. Things that we thought were impossible are not only possible, they're happening right in front of our faces, and people are choosing to ignore it. So yeah, I'll stop this here. I'll add more video context later, more of me talking whenever I get back inside the house. And I'll show you some cool pictures of these ancient golden wizard hats and these quartzite pillars. I appreciate you guys listening, and be right back. Okay, guys, just as a thought experiment, let's pretend that telepathy is real, okay? That would suggest that the universe around us, this dense matter composed of atoms, isn't all there is to the story. It's just an overlay. It is it's a screen, but the actual guts of the computer is behind the screen. You're observing the screen of whatever device you're currently using, but inside are a whole bunch of, processors and memory and all sorts of fun little battery power supply shit that helps your phone run. But what you're watching is the screen. This physical reality around us is just the screen. There's a whole hidden dark web to reality, and it doesn't exist in just a limited measurable sense. Reality as we're currently experiencing it, the ears that you're using to listen to me, this all exists within reality. Even your brain processing what I'm saying right now, turning my language into idea in your head. All of this is reality. But there is something beyond that, something that's not perceivable unless you have certain tools. See, I believe that a long time ago, ancient civilizations that we currently know very little about, or we don't even remember existing at all, or are theorized to exist, like Atlantis, Lemurians, or Mu, any of these ancient possible civilizations that existed, let's say that they understood that reality isn't as we think it is, that it's not just composed of dense, hard matter, it's not measurable. Maybe they understood that communication over a long distance was possible because they're more in tune with nature, or were taught how to affect or interact with or properly facilitate use of this etheric cloud of probability around us by using things like tools. I mean, whenever you want to build something, whenever you want to turn an idea in your head into something in real life by working on it, whether it's like a carving or a painting or building a house, whenever you make this transition from idea into reality, there are tools that you use, whether it's a carving knife or a paintbrush, what have you. There are tools you use to turn this idea into reality, to interact with this Akashic field all around us, where the muse is, where creativity springs from, right? Maybe there are tools you can use to work in this medium. Physical tools that help facilitate your use of things like telepathy or spiritual powers. Maybe there are tools that do this. And this is where we find this right here on the screen. We see all these golden hats that are thousands of years old. Very intricate, very pointy gold hats like this. This is a close-up. You can see how intricate the gold work is. I mean, the fact that these survived in such great shape is a fucking miracle. It's beautiful. Europeans back then had some talent. And this is what it would look like on a proper shaman, on a proper druid, or Anglo-Saxon, or Celtic, or Germanic, or Norse, whatever type of shaman this guy actually was, because we have no idea. These hats are found all over Europe. So it's pretty interesting. That's what the shaman would look like wearing this crazy fucking antenna hat. I think this helped facilitate communication at a distance. This soothsayer wasn't just able to communicate with the spiritual world, he was able to communicate with other human beings over a distance using, I believe, this tool, this hat, and possibly the use of his staff that he's holding. See, often you see gods portrayed holding different objects. These either have a symbolic meaning, which a lot of them have symbolic meanings, mythological as well as esoteric, divine alchemy symbolism. But I think there are some objects that actually had a physical use. They were tools to help you interact with these higher spiritual powers that are locked inside of all humans, but society stamps out of us with television and money. Money is the big one. Money is the big one. But yeah, these are some of the hats. They're fucking awesome. Berlin gold hat. The oldest one being the golden hat of Schifferstadt, 1600 BC. This is where they were from. So yeah, the one all the way over in France. I mean, this could have just been one tribe of people, but I think there's a purpose to these. They aren't just crowns. They're shaped like antennas. There are other hats as well. You see the little point on top, the antenna-like point on the top, all the way out there in Portugal. I mean, that is definitely... There's a purpose. This is a tool. This isn't protective. It's fucking gold. It is not comfortable. You'd wear, hell, like a Phrygian cap. You'd take a cow scrotum off and use that if you're into comfort. It's nice and soft. But this is not soft, nor is it protective. This is either ceremonial or it has an actual physical use, and I believe it's to help facilitate communication over a great distance. The Egyptians did something similar, but I think they used their staff. This is the Was scepter, W-A-S scepter. Stylized Anubis-type animal head at the top, possibly the Was dog, which is now extinct. And then the forked tongue, which is, to me, is like a grounding rod. That's the first thing that this makes me think of, as someone who actually does electrical work. This is a grounding rod. You have this, I mean, it's better than copper. It's fucking gold. This is to maybe tap into this ether by accessing the entire earth grid, tapping into ley lines or spiritual gateway points around the Earth's globe. I mean, the surface of the Earth. There are these points where energy collides, collects, and then disperses. And I believe these Was scepters were used to tap into that Earth grid. I don't know how exactly. I believe this to be true. Here's some more golden hats. Gold is at the top of the pyramid too. The pyramidion, the Bin stone at the very top of the pyramid, these were often gold for a reason. So yeah, maybe these hats help facilitate communication using telepathy. Maybe having a conductor around on top of the electrical powerhouse, the computer that is your brain, constantly firing off neurons. Maybe it helps to have a conductor that close. Maybe there is functionality here. Maybe it's not just ornamental. It's possible that we could do this without these golden hats on. I think a lot of people probably can and do and don't even realize they're doing it. But let's say that this is just a little bit easier wearing one of these golden hats. It's kind of like trying to hammer in a nail with a rock or being allowed to use a hammer. The hammer makes the job a lot easier. Maybe this is the same thing. Maybe we're seeing functionality here, not just aesthetics. It's hard to say, but I think considering it is at the highest point of your body, I'm not sure. Here we see the different weights. Oh, this is the molded gold cape. This is something a shaman would wear over their shoulders. They'd have very little movement in their arms, of course, but this is probably ornamental, but maybe it does something to amplify other energy centers in your body. I mean, your head isn't the only, crucial point. Your heart is also I mean, it is a dynamo, constantly churning, generating a huge magnetic field, constantly pumping, without you even having to try to do it. Maybe this helps facilitate the use of your heart chakra in different spiritual gifts, like things like, you know, laying on hands and spiritual healing, or trying to read someone's fortune and get a good feel for them as a person. These empathetic heart chakra spiritual traits. This is it actually being worn. Like I said, you can't move your arms very much, but it's beautiful. And perhaps there's functionality here. Perhaps having that much gold on you, this very powerfully charged field that is around you is amplified. Maybe you can tap in easier with an abundance, like an antenna. Like how we used to wrap copper around a pipe and then attach that to a stereo so you get better reception. Maybe it's the same thing. I mean, look at these giant gold necklaces. Maybe there's functionality here. Oh, and this is Joe Rogan with the Cheshire Cat mug. Nod to Alice. Oh, shit. This is a shirt that I would wear if I was like 20 pounds lighter. I think it's fucking great. Like we said, you know, gods wear different things, not just practical, but stylish and ornamental. And this is the shirt of a god, a paisley god. It's very gay, but I love it. This is a temple of Makard and Tyr. This is a Phoenician temple that is, the pillars that you see, these aren't pillars that were holding up a roof at any point. This is just a grid of pillars. And as you can see here, covered in gold. Maybe these were amplification stations used to help read people at a greater distance. Maybe people would gather here, all think the same thought, and try to amplify the signal by using the earth and these natural man-made antennas covered in gold. Maybe the purpose of Melkart was communication, was contacting the hill. I don't know. This is a better picture of it. You can see they're obviously never held up a roof because they're pointed. They're all basically obelisks. And these could have been like communication stations for all I know. I don't know. I'm theorizing here. Obviously, the obelisk comes from, you know, ball and a very obvious cog. And there's a whole story behind fucking pillars. Don't get me started. But I think this one here has a very specific purpose. And I think it was communication with their sailors going out over the Atlantic Ocean, going to America to harvest all of our yummy copper. Okay, yeah, the was scepter was that scepter I was showing you earlier, the Egyptian one. I believe it had a practical purpose. The forked end is a dead fucking giveaway. Here it is again. The stylized version is neat, I think. I mean, that's not the only thing that gods hold, though. They don't just hold the was scepter. They also hold the Vajra. Like, there are so many different images of European deities holding the Vajra. It's insane. Zeus held one. It's the lightning bolt. It did something. There was a purpose behind this thing. Whether that was something very tangible, like shooting lightning out of it, I have no fucking clue. But the gods held it. It meant something. You have the god holding it, then guess what? There's something very specific behind that object. It's not just symbolic. There's a practical purpose for a god to be holding an object whenever it's presented in art. It means something, okay? Like, we always see royalty and saints holding this. What the fuck is this? It's called a globus Kruger. It is the earth with a big cross over it, at the pole. You can see it's almost a double cross, which a double cross is symbolically means a stargate or merging or transition. It almost looks like a reflection of itself. But it is the earth topped with a cross to represent Christianity's rule over the planet. That's what this means. So whenever you see someone holding one of these motherfuckers, it means we're going to dominate and kill everybody that's not Christian. It's kind of what it meant back then. You see Sumerian gods holding this. It's called a rod and coil. The coil is used, it's like a coil of rope that's a specific length. So it's your measuring tape and then your straight edge. With a coil and rope, you can make any shape. It's very easy to make a circle with these two objects. Extremely easy. They're holding it to represent they are the ones judging us. Oh, sorry, Samsung, notice. They are measuring us. They are the ones building the temples. They are the geographers. They're the big G in the middle of the compass and edge. That's basically like him holding up a Masonic compass and edge. That's exactly the same meaning. But it was a coil and a rod. And I had a whole video about rods, so go back and watch that one. See the coil and rod, see the shape to it, how it's like a line with a circle on top of it? Well, I believe that they gave, see, that's what that symbol is right there. But they decided to give it a handle in Egypt because they were progressive and they always improved on Sumerian. So they gave the rod and coil a handle to hold, to turn it into a divine ornamentation. I don't know. All the gods fucking held them. They say it means everlasting life or immortality or any number of things that it doesn't mean. It's basically a compass and edge, I believe. It's just a Sumerian rod and coil with the fucking handle, make it easier for the gods to hold. Then you have the Jed pillar. What the fuck does the Jed pillar mean? Is that not, it looks like a fucking transformer. It's very important. There are pictures of gods literally putting these into place, like setting these stones. And it looks like it has a mechanical purpose. I'm theorizing that it's for contact through the ether, whether it's from, you know, your higher self, a deity, angelic type beings, regular spirits, the dead, or just other humans who are sailing to America to harvest our copper. Like I said, it's always important what the gods are holding. Look at this. What is this? I think that's Oannes, I'm not sure. What's this random Sumerian dude holding? Poppy plants. Poppy plants have a very mentally crazy purpose to them. Aleister Crowley did opiates all the fucking time whenever he was supposedly communicating with Lamb. But they're holding the poppies. This is important. It was important to them. They were heroin junkies in ancient Sumeria and in Egypt. Another, this is Marduk, and you see him holding the poppies as he's coming through the Stargate. Poppies were very important. Gods only hold important shit. This is what my god likes to carry. The Thrice's staff. It's made out of a piece of fennel, a ribbon, and a pine cone. This is obviously the pineal gland at the top of the spinal cord. The ribbon is just so fucking cool, though. I love the Thrice's staff. This is the staff of Hermes. We both know that's the Kundalini serpent. We know that the ball on top is a pineal gland, and the rod is basically your spinal column. It's obvious. This is obvious symbolism. Okay, yeah, I'm done ranting. Telepathy is real. I believe it. Believe the people who are spellers. Have faith that the universe might work different than you think it fucking does. And be open and receptive and loving. Be very loving. This is key.